What is the worst thing that you've seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details / back statements from one company to their direct competitor. Accidentally? Twas but an oversight, my dear. I came close to this. Within my first few months out of college, working as a design engineer, copy and pasted what I then realized was a confidential proprietary design that we created for a competitor of the client. My boss admitted blame, he signed off and certified it without realizing I had copied it from a proprietary job until I told him that was my reference material after the job was issued. We have a big database of industry standard reference material we use, but he also said I could use previous jobs as reference designs. However, I was unaware at the time that some of our corporate designs were proprietary. We agreed that, at the level of experience I was at and the training I was given, I wasn't fully expected to know that at that stage. Needless to say, I've not done it again. That is how it is supposed to work. People make mistakes. Different from the casual bastardry that is a lot of these replies. When companies don't do what yours did, employees just get better at hiding and blame shifting mistakes. Had a boss storing pictures of himself in only his wide open bathrobe on company servers. It was reported to ours, but wasn't fired for it. Later he was arrested as part of an undercover sting where he thought he was meeting a 15-year-old girl about 500 miles away. Way too many questions / comments to reply to all of them. More details. The images were stored in a shared folder used by a few employees. The guy was our ad manager, so he should have known better than storing them there. Assuming the pictures were taken using a work camera, because digital cameras were very expensive at that time and the company had a few. Before he left for the weekend to meet the girl, he had asked to use the digital camcorder I had for work. He told me he needed it to make a video of his home possessions for insurance purposes, but I was suspicious of that, so I told him I needed it for work. We found out he was arrested when he called the computer room collect from jail. This was later in the evening when he no-showed for work that day. We didn't accept the charges, but called back later to see what he was charged with. At that time we were told solicitation of a minor, but the whole details came out later when he was on the local news station. For the ones that doubt the story. Link. And I would walk 500 more. Just to be the man. To walk 1,000 miles. To get handcuffed by your door. Removed. Bowers rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as ours and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. That's not just worthy of being fired, that's 100% illegal. Edit. Please look for yourself, it's not illegal in jurisdictions. Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. My dad's foreman once put gasoline in something that needed water and ruined an entire asphalt driveway. He's old and forgetful and only works to get away from his wife. I knew an elder gentleman who accidentally primed a well pump with the 5-gallon jug of kerosene rather than water. After that incident, the tap water was no longer allowed to be used for anything food related. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and have the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I'm that guy. Amma. How did you not die? Barely. I had 3 days of in my office. Now I was honest, it was one of those jobs with more than one teams of 2 and another guy was the lead. But as soon as I saw pictures of the devastation I knew it was my fault. I told my boss that wasn't X's fault, I did that. I made a 1 in a million shot. I couldn't do it again if I tried. My boss said my honesty saved my job. But I'm at 2 strikes right now. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds, because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. That link impressive. How did setting the clock back lead to that? Not the op, but I assume their pose was a piece of shit from 2003 made up of the programming equivalent of gum and paperclips that fell apart when the time from one part of the program didn't match the time from another part. Haha, that reminds me of a guy that was brought into my store to train as a manager used to try to flirt with me by bragging about the amount of drugs he did. Anyways, when he was eventually made manager of one of our chain's biggest stores, he closed it 2 hours early. Apparently he had other things to do. He just sent all the employees home, kicked out the customers, and locked up. However, he was most definitely fired after that. Attention shoppers. Get the fuck out. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing shit when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it, and said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. That's middle management material right there. No. That's a straight shooter with upper management written all over him. Had a coworker like this. I still have arguments with her in my head. It's been 7 years. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send dick pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop or they'd take it up with management, and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it, and my wife went to management with everything and said this guy's out or I'm quitting. Well, she quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. As an assistant manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he didn't want working on his car. He didn't know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously, I never saw him again. Edit. I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. Edit #2. I'm very sorry that I misspoke. I was an assistant to the manager. Well, this is the only example where I'm cheering for the offender. Former Viarc assistant manager also. This would have been 12 years ago now. Our gun locks never worked properly, so for the most part we always had to hold the trigger arm down to pump in the oil. No big deal, probably better anyway. But the locks also prevent accidentally opening the valve when they would get caught on the gun. Link, the passenger side of a Link, a woman's brand new $4,000 bridal dress sitting uncovered in the front seat. It was a complete accident and thankfully the manager was there when it happened. I took the topside guy who was visibly upset, verge of tears, guilty feeling, out the back door, talked him down, told him to take a long on the clock lunch. The customer's fiance came up later that day to apologize for his future bride being rightfully pissed off at us. 2 days later, the corporate maintenance guy for our chain was replacing and testing every single gun on the rack. We had to suspend the guy for not following procedures. Area manager had to do it because the chain managers forced him to, and he quit while on suspension. But it could have been literally anybody in the store that day. Still a bunch of marked tools. They were painted white. Showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with set tools in the background. Gets reported. Boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me. I stole a gallon of white paint." Never heard the boss laughing so hard. Year later or so he gets promoted, lol. Damn, that's some quick thinking. What the fuck? He stole the tools, but the boss thought his response was funny, so all was forgiven. Maybe a few brojobs were exchanged and you'd climbed the old corporate ladder. After already being disciplined and essentially demoted for doing his job terribly, my coworker drunk texted all of our managers in the middle of the night asking why they didn't love him. It's been about 2 weeks and I haven't seen him since, but he's not gone. Not the worst thing he could have done, but I cringe thinking about it. Not the same thing, but I drunkenly sent a dick pic to my work group chat, and I'm still absolutely mortified till this day. Edit. Adding more info. Oh god, this is most attention I've got on Reddit, and it's about my dick lol. Yes, this is exactly what happened. It was on Snapchat. I was sending pics to another guy, for everyone asking, yes they wanted me to send it, not just sent out of the blue lol. We sent a few pics back and forth and someone wrote something into the work group chat, so I accidentally chose to send it there, and before I knew I had pressed send. I knew immediately the second I pressed it I was deemed. They started opening it immediately. I just typed in that I was so embarrassed, but they were all pretty cool about it and sent me private messages of support and vowed to never mention it in work. I still am so embarrassed though, definitely most embarrassing moment of my life, and I'm clumsy by nature. Tip. If you leave a group chat on Snapchat, any snaps you've sent into can no longer be opened. Wish I knew that beforehand. I'm just glad it wasn't on Messenger or WhatsApp where the picture would still be shudder. Yeah, that's worse. Obligatory, not me but my wife. She had a coworker that literally punched a customer, wasn't fired. He later got into a physical altercation with another coworker, wasn't fired. Then he wrapped my wife's hair around her throat and play choked her. Still was not fired. Finally, he got into yet another altercation with a coworker and pulled a gun on him, all while on the clock. Then he was fired. Man, what kind of shit did he have on the boss to blackmail him like that?